Brother, are you all right?
No, I am not all right. I just shared a bottle of Kanar with Damar. That rhymes.
You're drunk.
Of course I'm drunk.
Oh, good afternoon and evening, everybody. Yes, stream part 2. It is time for the typical nerding session that finally my work schedule has decided to cooperate enough. Yeah. A lot of stuff been going on, but we are here, we are back, and we are ready. But what are we talking about? Well, I'm not going to make you wait till Tuesday for it, but yeah. We're going over one of the flops. Not the worst flop, but yeah, definitely in the lower half of Star Trek movies. Number 7, Generations. Yay.
See, now, in my opinion, if you judge them on intent and overall plot line, which I've said this before in other movies, if you judge them over on intent and general plot line, it's not that bad. It's the execution that falls through over a lot of different issues.
Yeah, of course, it needs to be an American pointed out that execution is also botched. I would say that Generations, I tend to agree with you. I think number 5 is actually way worse.
Like I said, lower half, not the worst, but definitely below that average demarcation line. So if you have that midpoint that separates the good Trek movies from the not so good, Generation flirts with that line. But yeah, number 5 is definitely below Generations in that regard.
I think, well, yeah, I agree that number 5 is below, but I don't see number 7 flirting with that line. It's definitely below it.
Oh, no, that's what I'm saying. It's below the line, but it might be the closest to the line, because keep in mind, of the movies that we have left to go over after this one, we have First Contact, which, let's be honest, above the line. And then
well above the line.
Yeah, and then we have Insurrection and Nemesis.
Insurrection, I think, was actually fine. Nemesis, I had a few problems with.
Yeah, so Nemesis would be right around the same position as Generations. Nemesis, below. So, yeah, it's right there around that demarcation. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get comfy on the bridge. And yes, there we go. Now we have a proper view screen suitable for this, but, you know?
Well, for now, until it's destroyed.
Shh.
I'm sorry.
You can spoiler this. The movie is like, what, 26 years old?
No. It's just let's just marvel in the fact that apparently Dom Perignon survives into the 23rd century.
Somehow. You know, there is a hotel in, was it Ireland, that's been operating for like 800 years, so it can happen.
No, that's like a Japanese one that has been like in the same family for like 30 generations, something ridiculous like this.
Ireland, Japan, yeah, what's the difference?
Yeah, I would say that there's a pretty big difference there.
You're saying they have both weird cultures, completely ununderstandable languages?
Yes, I was going to say, as an American, I can't understand what either of them say.
To be fair, you can't understand what a lot of Americans say. But is that more an indictment of you or them? That's the question.
I can understand what they say, but I can't understand what they say.
Well,
I can understand the words. All right.
Well, with that, as the beginning of the movie, we actually do get... I will give it this. It actually did have a very well done actual credit sequence to start the movie. Now, oftentimes the rotation of shut the fuck up, everyone. But you actually do get a good view of the scope of just how space actually looks with
So
next to
I
nothing.
apologize. I don't have too many screenshots of this because I was trying to keep it down. I think I'm only at like 350.
Nice.
So this is the next shot. But the opening sequence is a very, like Jared said, a very nice credit sequence, and then this random weird thing that's shiny, and then eventually you find out it's a bottle of Dom Perignon, and ceremoniously smashes against the side of the ship, which means that clearly it will be a successful voyage, because it's only bad luck if it doesn't smash.
This is true.
Or is that only on Tuesdays?
No. Apparently that works for every other day of the week. So
yeah. So this is the christening of the USS Enterprise, NCC 1701B, which will be the first ship of the Enterprise class to not have Captain Kirk at the helm in how many years?
Enterprise class? Don't say Enterprise class. That sounds wrong.
Sorry. By the name of Enterprise.
Yeah. So it's the first Starfleet ship to carry the name Enterprise to not have Kirk in command in, I think they said
26 years, I think.
Yeah, 20-something years.
Well, TOS started in 2266, I think. And this should be in 2293.
So
am I right?
We transition then? I'm not sure. Let me see if I can find it. I just opened up the script. Nope, that's not the button.
Yep, you hit the wrong button. You took away the pictures.
Excelsior class. Yeah, inauguration 2293.
Yeah, but when did Kirk initially... Well, now here's another question with that aspect of it. This is where we can get into the pedanticness of it. Still not seeing you. There were periods of time of the original Enterprise, the refit, where Spock was in command, not Kirk.
Come on. So Kirk got command over the Enterprise in 2265, which means we're dealing with 28 years. Not counting in any interruptions in the middle.
So according to the script, the journalist asked Captain, this is the first Starship Enterprise in 30 years without James T. Kirk at the command.
Close enough for a question from a journalist.
Ballpark. So then we move on to interior of the ship, as again, this is the maiden voyage, and a good portion of the Enterprise crew is present, to include a little bit of the lineage, or the children of the Enterprise crew.
And this is where we are introduced to... Oh, God, what was her... I didn't write down her first name.
Damar.
Ah, that is right.
Ensign Damar Sulu.
To which, rightfully so, at this point looking at it, Kirk does respond that it wouldn't be the Enterprise without a Sulu at the helm. Yet he didn't have Sulu for how long?
And then they have the awkward conversation of when did Sulu have time for a family? And I believe it was Scotty that says, Captain, you said if something's important, you make the time.
Bit of foreshadowing?
And you can see here how badly Kirk wants that chair.
He misses the chair. He misses the position. He misses the experience of being around. And as those who are getting towards the end of their career in service, it does hit you, that finality of it, that sense that this part of my life is either over or coming to an end.
Shut the
Are
fuck
you
up,
sh-
Jared. I still have a couple years left.
Are you sure that his old fat legs just can't carry him anymore?
You can adjust the artificial gravity on the ship.
Can you? Has that ever been established? I don't think so.
Yes, the gravity plating, you can adjust it. It's actually something they've done in all the series to where they can manipulate the gravitational field in a single space to be whatever percent of Earth normal.
Are you sure you're not talking about the Orville? 'Cause
They've
that
done
was
it
an
there
episode
too.
of the Orville.
Well, I know that it worked on Deep Space Nine, but I can't recall a single event on any of the ships where it wasn't either completely on or completely switched off.
Yeah, I don't remember. So as they're getting ready to begin the mission, the captain, the new captain, asks for Captain Kirk to give the order, and as all good journalists do,
Right onto you. At which
get in his face.
Kirk is actually trying to be a bit on the humble side. No, not my place. I'm just here. No, I insist. No. No, seriously, I must insist. Fucking
Take us
Herman.
out. And just these simple words of "take us out."
Which got an inordinate amount of applause, but I will give this. Chekhov and Scotty had the best response to it. Very good, sir.
Brought me to tears.
Brought a tear to me eye. Oh, shut up.
Their interactions on this bridge are the interactions of three crusty bastards that are in an awkward scenario. You got to admit that.
Yes, it is very much that old salt mentality of we don't really want to be here, but we're going to make the best of it. And oh, hey, we have an opportunity to give you shit. We're going to do it.
Yeah. So then we get the wonderful shots of the ship exiting space dock. And the captain stating that, let me see if I can find it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've just cleared the asteroid belt.
Our course today will take us out past Pluto and then back to space dock. Just a quick run around the block.
Now, think about that. They're in the Sol system, and then all of a sudden, in comes a distress call. Dun, dun, dun.
This is the transport ship La Cool. We were caught in some kind of energy distortion. 2 ships in our convoy were trapped in a severe gravimetric distortion. We can't break free. We need immediate help. It's tearing us apart.
And
at this point, you can kind of see the new captain freaking out.
duck on water is really the view of it. On the outside, it does initially look cool, collected, a little stoic, just analyzing the situation, but at the same time, those of us who've been in the situations can see on the surface of the water, a duck looks calm and cool, but under the surface, the feet are going a mile a minute.
And so just so you know the location of this, yes, they're still within the Sol system. They've just cleared the asteroid belt. But when he asks where the ships are, they're approximately 3 light years away. So the wave is not, or whatever is happening, is not in the Sol system.
No, it's almost Alpha Centauri distance away.
And Harriman, the captain, says, signal the closest ship. We're in no condition to mount a rescue. We don't even have a full complement aboard. And the navigator informs him, we're the only one in range.
Why? Why would a ship that Starfleet knows has not even a skeleton crew aboard, is only going out on initial, essentially a publicity stunt at this point? Why would that be the only ship in the sector in range to help anything going on in that area?
Yeah, there'd have to be something else. Key plot point. That's got to be it. You got to force them into it. So then, you know the quote from this one, Jared? From Scotty. As the captain's walking around the ship trying to figure out what to do, Kirk keeps
shifting.
fidgeting.
Yeah, he keeps shifting in his seat, and Scotty asks, "Something wrong with your chair, sir?"
So they decide that they are going to mount the rescue efforts. Sits down on the seat. Oh, then there's the question. There's something wrong with your chair, sir. They kick in the warp drive and head off to the system. And here's the
go back to that, because this is something that I noted of a bit of a faux pas. What are they using here? They're demonstrating the ship at warp because they decide, well, we're the only one in range. We got to do it. Let's go there, maximum warp. Go back to one of the first screenshots of the Enterprise B that you had. Let's see. Let's play Spot the Difference.
Say that again?
We're playing Spot the Difference on the ship. So go back to one of the first shots of the ship in space dock. Okay. See how it looks? Now go back to that warp shot. Let me know if you see something missing.
Kind
There's no rim around the bottom.
Both simultaneously.
Yeah. No. So what they're doing here is they're using stock footage from Star Trek VI.
That's the Excelsior.
Exactly. Which the model for the Enterprise B was actually the Excelsior model modified to be a refit version of the Excelsior, which the primary other time that model was used was as the USS Lakota in DSS9 and DS9.
And you mean the rim on the
secondary hull? Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I see it now, yes.
The underbite.
For fuck's sake, that thing is ugly. I've never noticed this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's nothing there. Good catch, Jared. But, they recycle footage frequently to include the explosion of Klingon birds of prey, which we may talk about later. But that's, again, foreshadowing.
That there's only one ever explosion of Klingon bird of prey, right?
It only happened one time.
Yeah, that's the point.
It's a temporal loop. But speaking of temporal loops, they arrive and they get a visual of the distortion that's causing the havoc on the refugee ships, the Elorian refugee ships. Which,
The storytellers.
I will give them this bit of credit, though, in that they note that they're tying in something that was established in TNG and essentially backdating it to actually fit in a way that I would not call an outright retcon, but a proper application of new information into the older timeline of Trek. Because
What's the history of the Elorians?
their homeworld was wiped out by the Borg.
In an episode or in...
It was mentioned in the Best of Both Worlds episodes because Guinan recognized the Borg, and she was, in talking with Picard before his assimilation, that's how, this is why I know, they wiped out our people. They're why we no longer have a homeworld. And here's the tail end of that event.
Guys, I think I gotta go. It's getting late.
Yep.
All right.
Pleasure having
Later,
you, Gio. Our other
Sure.
regular cast member will be in shortly, as he is still at work for another 10 to 15 minutes.
Is that our time or his time?
He said local. He said this time, so.
Okay, cool.
So with that,
Okay.
we get the wonderful visuals of the ships being tossed around, and then all of a sudden, everyone lurching. 3, 2, 1.
So now I think I've mentioned this before. I read a story a long time ago that this is the first time that any of the Enterprise bridges actually moved themselves. So this bridge had motion on it, and Kirk fell down. And after he fell down, somebody came running up to him and helped him up and started apologizing. We're sorry, sir. We didn't realize it was going to shake that hard. For a man of your age, you shouldn't be taking blows that hard. And Kirk got up and did everything but say, go fuck yourself.
How do you know you're getting old? When you fall down, it's no longer funny. There's genuine concern.
Yep. So then we have our first shot of Tuvok.
Is it Tuvok, though?
No, it can't be. It's got to be an ancestor of Tuvok.
No, no, it's just Tim Ross, because if you look, no pointed ears.
Oh, yeah. He has a black Vulcan doppelganger.
Yep.
So now the captain's running around the ship, and apparently he's the only one with good ideas because he keeps running from station to station. Can we do this? Can we do that? Can we do this? Can we do that? And everybody shoots him down of, no, we can't do that. It's not possible.
Yeah, it's... And then they end up losing one of the refugee ships. But yeah, and we get a running theme here in this bit of
yes, we
everything
forgot to talk
going
about
on.
that.
Because one of the suggestions that comes up, which, judging by looking at the screenshots, is actually mentioned here. Harriman finally gives up and actually looks to Kirk for any suggestions. And the first suggestion that Kirk makes, tractor beam. Well...
Yeah, I don't have a screenshot of that, but...
We can't use the tractor beam. Why not? Won't be installed until Tuesday.
No, we don't have a tractor beam. And Kirk's response was, you left space dock without a tractor beam?
It'll be installed on Tuesday.
It won't be installed until Tuesday.
Isn't there a Voyager flashback to this time Tuvok is already 180 years old or so? At least it's supposed to be that. Yes, there was the flashback episode where Tuvok was on the Excelsior at the time of Star Trek VI. So Tuvok is in Starfleet, but that was not Tuvok. So you get the suggestion of the tractor beam. You get the suggestion of transporters. And they're actually able to manage that, and Scotty gets how many?
So we get that explosion. Captain's asking for help. And then again, we get the reporters in their face. And get them out of my face. We get the shot. This is really good visuals. I will give them that. The later on explanation of what this is, no, but beautiful visuals. Here we've got another one of those. Right before this is the transporter. Where I'm looking through the script right now.
This is they had just getting ready to transport him aboard.
Yep.
Asked about the medical staff.
So how many people were aboard? How many people were aboard the ship? 265. How many are? Damn it! I had it a second ago. How many Scotty gets on board?
I think it was only like 40 something, like 44 out of 150 something.
Oh yeah, okay. So that's coming up next. So right here is how big is your medical staff? Chekhov asked. The medical staff doesn't arrive till Tuesday, and Chekhov points at two reporters and says, "You've just become nurses. Let's go."
Yep. So they're on.
Then we've got the life signs are phasing in and out of the space-time continuum. As the hull is buckling, Scotty beams them out. Transport complete. See if I've got the screenshot of that.
Yeah.
I got 47 out of 150.
47 off of both ships of almost 300.
Yep.
Almost 300 people.
Now, I took this screenshot just to show how amazing Scotty is at hiding his missing finger.
Now, at this point, the Enterprise B is stuck.
We're caught in a gravimetric field emanating from the trailing edge of the ribbon. All engines in reverse.
Which does a fuckload of nothing.
Yeah.
And
so the next shot we get in there is in the sick bay, and we get our first shot of Soren.
Oh, Malcolm McDowell, you will never live that down.
And we don't know exactly what's going on. He's being very combative. He wants to go back. He's fighting with the staff that's trying to help him, and we don't know exactly what the issue is. And then we get our first shot of Guinan. And this is the first key in of we have somebody else that's been here for a long time. Back on the bridge.
Back on the bridge, we get the decision in order to break free, the blast from a photon torpedo should do the trick. Well, what armed photons? Well, we don't have any. Let me guess. Tuesday. To which Harriman just kind of sheepishly nods and looks away.
Meh.
It's like... At which point, Scotty comes up with the idea that a resonance burst from the main deflector could do the trick. And at first, Harriman offered to go down to deflector control to set everything up.
I'll go. You have the bridge. And for a second, Kirk sits down. And he is ready, and I don't think I have that screenshot. Nope. Kirk is ready to take command. But one of the few times that Kirk makes a very intelligent decision and tells the captain, wait, your place is on the bridge of your ship. I'll take care of it. Now, the question is then, why the fuck did Kirk go down on the landing party so often? If the place of the captain was on the bridge?
This is answered later in the movie, and we will quote Picard for this one. Captain's prerogative.
So, Kirk runs down to the deflector room. We see Kirk working. And then we've got a massive discharge.
Well, first, before the discharge, Kirk does get everything set up. And he says, that's it. Let's go. Scotty kicks off the command. It starts breaking free. And as they're getting away, that's where that beam comes out and takes out that section of the ship.
Then
they break free, they get clear, things start to settle down, and everyone starts to celebrate. Harriman calls out over the comm system.
He asks for damage report. There's some buckling on the starboard nacelles, and we've got hull breaches and engineering sections. Emergency force fields are in place and holding. And Scotty asks, where? Sections 20 through 28 on decks 13, 14,
and 15.
And 15.
Well, now, to be fair, we're missing where Harriman did call out to Kirk to congratulate him.
Oh, yes, you did it.
Right. You did it, Kirk. Damage report. That's where they find out, and as Damar realizes, fuck, that's where Kirk was. Scotty pipes up. Captain Kirk.
Bridge to captain. Yep.
And the no response just starts to give you that pit in your stomach, to which Scotty says, tell Chekhov to meet me at deck 15. And Harriman and Scotty go down. The doors open and they look out, and beyond the railing, empty space. Chekhov comes in, and his response right as he comes in, my God, was anybody in here?
Single word says it all. And an appropriate word for the ending of a scene, which foreshadowing, the appropriate words for the ending of a different scene were shat upon, and they picked shitty words, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. And now, 78 years later, we're
And again
the ocean.
on the Enterprise.
But that doesn't look like an appropriate era ship. What the hell's going on? To it, and then we hear the typical sounds and cacophony of an era of sail ship at sea with essentially its station keeping. And then you hear Riker call out, "Bring out the prisoner." And they pull out Worf.
And Picard's, "Mr. Worf, I always knew this day would come. Are you prepared to face the charges?"
I am prepared.
And then the Troy tries to sound badass. "Answer him."
Try so hard, but didn't quite work. Didn't quite have the delivery. Which,
and then
Riker reels off the roll and starts going through a list that don't really sound like punishable charges.
"We, the officers of the crew of the USS Enterprise, being sound mind and judgment, do hereby make the following charges against Lieutenant Worf. 1. That he did knowingly and willfully perform above and beyond the call of duty on countless occasions. 2. Most seriously, that he has earned the admiration and respect of the crew." And then Picard chimes in, "Mr. Worf, I hereby promote you to the rank of Lieutenant Commander."
And all rights and privileges there too. Which, I will give him this. And Tech does bring up a good point in the chat. While to many this may come off as a pointless and frivolous scene, this is actually very apt for a number of military ceremonies for promotions that take place. Like, outside of an active battlefield environment, you're getting shenanigans as part of the promotion ceremony.
And the ceremonies, for a lot of military purposes, there are a lot of ceremonies. There's change of command ceremonies and change of responsibility ceremonies and promotion ceremony, all kinds of other stuff. And as annoying as they are for 90% of the people that are standing there, for that one person, it is something that may drive them to continue service. It is something that makes them feel as part of the group. And it's something that I've kind of been feeling down about recently, because one of the big ceremonies is a retirement ceremony. And that is the capping off of someone's career. And it is usually a major event for someone, especially if you've done, 25 plus years. If you got out at 5, 10 years, you don't get a ceremony. But if you did 20 and you're retiring, you get a full-blown ceremony. But over the past 3 months, nobody's gotten retirement ceremonies because we're forbidden from gathering in groups. So I've had 2 people that work for me that have retired over the past 3 months. And it's a little painful knowing that they are walking away from 20 years of service with a phone call of thanks.
Yeah. And it just shows how much things have affected what would otherwise be normal operations. Now, this is where things do get interesting, and there are nuances and little touches to this scene in particular that do help move the plot along and actually set up things for later. Because keep in mind, we're still in the opening act of the movie. We're still setting everything up. We've introduced who ends up being the main antagonist. We've established that something had happened to Kirk on the mission, and we're laying the foundations and the groundwork and getting everyone familiar, because let's remember, this is the first feature film with the Next Generation crew.
And this is supposed to be the passing of the torch.
Now, something to keep in mind with the way that this movie is written and everything, as we're going to be getting into even more here very, very soon, they started pre-production and writing of the script and everything for this movie midway through season 7 of The Next Generation. Before they had actually wrapped up and completed everything with the TV show, they were already beginning work on what we're seeing right here.
Then what's their excuse?
No, it explains a lot, because you have a lot of the writers who were doing the series now doing the movie. Writing a script and a screenplay and everything for a movie is a different beast than writing it for a TV series. Because keep in mind, your typical TV series, in a 1-hour episode, you actually only have 45 minutes to 50 minutes of actual screen time. What was the runtime of this movie?
Oh, was it a full 2 hours?
Pretty close.
Yeah.
So you had near double the runtime, the screen time, with no commercial breaks to plan for as well. And you had the same people who were writing from one format to another. Yeah, there's growing pains there.
So, from the continuation on this, the next call is lower the badge of office, which would be his hat. And Mr. Worf is told to get out on the plank and retrieve his hat, which nobody has ever done before. And Mr. Worf proves Riker wrong.
It does it on the first frickin' go. To which Picard rightfully shoots back with, "There's one thing I've learned, number one. Never underestimate a Klingon."
Puts on his hat. He's all happy. Oh, but wait.
Everyone's cheering.
Riker yells out, "Remove the plank!"
Computer, remove the plank. And then you get that very cartoon-esque look from Worf looking down at his feet, then looking up, and then dropping. Number one, that's retract plank, not remove plank.
Of course, Kerr. Yeah, of course, sir.
Sorry! In which everyone's laughing, rightfully so. It was a funny instance, but Data still doesn't get it. And he
sets up one of the other major plot lines of the series. And Data asks, "Doctor, I must confess, I am uncertain as to why someone falling into freezing water is amusing."
Oh, it's all in good fun, Data. It's the unexpected.
Fun? So he pushes her in.
Deadpan, just, poof.
Poof. And again, Data is absolutely confused as to why it's not funny.
No one's laughing at that one. And the interaction between he and Geordi, the way they essentially finish the sentence together. Data, that was not funny.
Not funny. And then after that, so we've established now Data and his general plot line. And we move into something that's fairly amusing of Riker trying to give commands to the crew of how to sail a ship.
Oh no, but before that, Picard, being the historian he is, I can agree with him on this. He really said... The announcement comes over that there's a personal message coming in for Picard, and Picard really sums it up beautifully, is that this is the life, Will. Just the wind and the stars, no one could reach you. This was freedom. To which Riker shoots back with,
"Bad food? Brutal discipline? No women?"
the very, very much channeling the inner Kirk that Riker has had ever since season 1 of TNG.
Yep. And that's when, right after that, is when Picard gets the call that there is a personal message. My first pedantry. How?
What do you mean, how?
There's a wall there. There's a physical wall there. How are there things on the other side of a physical wall?
Here's the question. Are any of the actual players, the actual crew members of the Enterprise D on the other side of the archway?
They can walk there, though.
The holodecks have gotten better.
Amazingly better. Apparently, it transports you mid, adventure to the other side of the room, so that you don't smack into a wall.
Well, here's a question. Why do you never? Only how many times was the actual interaction with the wall shown in Star Trek? I can think of one. And that was in an encounter at Farpoint where they introduce it, and
then Will comes out wet with digital water.
Oh, and not just that. Not that. I'm talking about the rock thrown against the wall to show the barrier. But when the people who are in the program, the actual crew members are moving around, keep in mind, everything shifts with them. Now, with force fields and everything, you can get optical illusions to where it looks the same, but you're essentially in your own little pocket when you move away from the larger group.
So Ugly German Truths has it. Hey, can think there the wall is there. The holodeck literally is supposed to give them their own flat Earth personal domes.
Yeah.
Absolutely how it's described in the TM.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where I don't really have a problem with that per se. There's more to what comes up right here that we have a problem with. To which...
So, Picard takes his message. Clearly, it is something disturbing. Old man with a hat is given the helm.
Now, here's one issue. Troy was at the helm, recognizes something that warrants her to, hey, I gotta step into counselor mode now. Gives the helm to the old boatswain. And goes down and asks, is everything all right, Captain? Knowing full damn fucking well the mental and emotional havoc that is starting to wreak over him right now.
Oh yeah, you could see it. You can feel it. I mean, the acting on this is very well that you can see something disturbing has happened.
And for Troy to go in and try to use that tact against that type of historically stubborn commander at times, yeah, X to doubt on her effectiveness as a counselor in this instance. Now, granted, there is a bit of there is a bit of redemption coming up on it, but still, it's like, who is at fault for that one?
So Picard declares that he is leaving, and again, here you can walk through where that wall is, but that's just me being pedantic and one of my frustration points for this movie. Internal consistency is shite.
Again, personal domes. It does happen. So Picard goes off, rightfully so. Nice view.
This is amazing view. This is cool to see. But to me, being a pedant pops a bubble.
Now, this is one little thing in me. I wish they would have let the explanation continue. Riker, continuing to go through, gives the commands. Geordi, set yard arms and stunsails.
What's a stunsail?
You see that last yard arm? Just above that, and then
Bridge to the holodeck 3.
Another distress call.
Were you hoping? Do you wish they would have gone full boating there?
A little bit, yeah. Little bit. Because having that progression and showing that... I do like the touch of Geordi not knowing what the Sunsel was. And then having Riker start to show bit of the knowledge and research he did into all this. Now, keep in mind, this is all for a promotion ceremony.
Oh, Will has spent many a day on that boat during his off time. Probably with a different gendered crew.
Fair point. Probably so.
Crew the entire ship with women, and that's what Will does every day. So Ugly German True says, so Furball, so you're arguing from ignorance, not realizing how it's supposed to work, meaning that you can't accept that this might actually work. No, because it's fucking Star Trek and it's not real. But I get your point. So the distress call comes in. We're picking up a distress call from the Amargosa Observatory, sir. They say they're under attack. Red alert, all hands to battle stations. Captain Picard to the bridge.
Now, I will give them this. They show a bit of proper pacing in this, that after we get this first of a few glorious movie quality hero shots of the Enterprise D, they start to show the command crew returning to the bridge.
Still in uniform.
Still in regalia from the ceremony.
And Riker tries to where is it? Trying to remember exactly what it was. Tries to brief Worf, Riker tries to brief Picard on what's going on, and Picard just kind of blows him off and continues to his ready room.
Yeah, it's pretty much putting everything on the XO, which
it is his job.
Not really uncommon.
Yeah, that is the XO's job.
But I like the snap, the whole. Normally, Picard would be more hands-on on the initial reporting and everything, so him putting all of that on Riker has Riker going, wait, what? Are you sure, sir? I said do it.
Yeah,
really?
Picard says, stand down from Red Alert. Number 1, begin an investigation. I'll be in my ready room. Sir, make it so. Just do it.
Which, it's nice to see that more human side of Picard being done in a way that shows the fragility that wasn't shown by the character in the series. So
it's personal.
Yeah.
It's not the command figure, it's not the authority figure. It's the human Picard. This is one of the few times that you get to see the human Picard. Not knowing why you're seeing it quite yet.
Yeah.
So then a small compliment goes over to the observatory. They start wandering around, seeing a lot of dead bodies.
As an initial inspection, it's like the blast patterns are consistent with a Type 3 disruptor. Great. That narrows it down to Romulans, Breen, and the Klingons. And as they go through,
then they find one life sign, and they find Soren. I'm sorry.
It's what he's most remembered for, typically.
It is. Yeah.
To which he's asked if he knows who. Well, if he's asked if he knows who attacked him, to which he says he doesn't. It just happened so quick. They get him out of there, and then get the announcement from the other nameless crew members, "Commander, you're going to want to see this."
And this, script-wise, bothers me. Because when you're standing over that body, would you have said with that tone and that certainty, Romulans? No shit! I mean, it's not like you're telling us something pivotal. Now, like, if you picked up a radio and said, Romulans attack the ship. Yeah, but it's not like you're saying something that's earth-shattering while you're standing over a Romulan body.
Yeah, but it's Worf. He's Klingon. He tends to be dramatic, especially when it's a blood enemy like the Romulans. So there is that little bit, and also at the same time, there was hopes that more non-Trek fans would actually be seeing the movie, so kind of have that bit more of an introduction until later on they realized, no, we fucking don't, because how many non-Trek people go watch Trek movies?
Little to none.
A little to none, and they're generally drug along by a Trek fan.
Yeah, they're the ones eating all the popcorn while they're checking their messages on their phone. So the next scene after we've got this, we've confirmed that we've got Soren and Romulans on board. We then jump over to Data's quarters. Meow.
Oh, Spot.
Spot's such a good kitty. And we continue the conversation that kind of started early of why Data didn't understand why it wasn't funny. Because Data is not programmed to understand emotions. As an android, that is not part of his programming.
And while he has always endeavored to be more human, there's always been that limitation. And here we get a throwback to something that actually started out in the Next Generation series, where Data did meet and spend time with his creator of Dr. Noonien Soong, who did develop an emotions chip specifically for Data.
He just had not quite used it yet. So they have the conversation of, are you sure you want to use this?
And in light of...
Forge asks, I thought you were worried that I thought this would overload your neural net. And Data's response is, that is true. However, I believe in growth as an artificial life form, and I have reached an impasse. For 34 years, I have endeavored to become more human, to go beyond my original programming. Still, I am unable to grasp basic concept of humor. This emotion chip may be the only answer.
Now, I'm going to pause right here for a second and point out, this is where it gets to be interesting for people who, if you're not doing much of anything on Thursday evenings, in the Discord server, we have been watching TNG episodes. And the episode that we just recently did from season 2 had the comic where Data was working with Guinan to try to understand humor and tried to learn from Joe Piscopo, of all people. Timing is wonderful on this.
Yeah. So Data confirms that he wants to use the emotion chip and see if it expands his experiences. And then we get the really creepy removal of Data's skull cap.
Toupee.
Why would you put all those flashing lights in there? Isn't that a waste of power?
Indicator lights for troubleshooting and signal tracking.
Yeah, shouldn't you be able to turn that on and off? Or maybe it turns on
when you take off the toupee.
Is removed. Okay, I can accept that. And then the next scene.
I wonder how many details like this we can connect from a TNG character directly to Kirk. And we have the amorous nature of Picard. We have the toupee of Data. Who's going to get the girdle?
Someone needs to have the terrible acting, though. You're thinking.
Have you met?
I can hear it.
Have you met Wesley Crusher?
Oh, bravo, my friend.
Anyways, moving on.
Next scene, we are now in the ready room with the commander. And I don't have too much in there.
It's just an update of what's going on from Riker to Picard, where Soren would like to meet with Picard as soon as possible.
So after that brief exchange,
Yep, we get Geordi and Data going to 10 forward, and Data looking oddly happy and
emotional.
entertained.
So they sit down at the bar. Data orders a drink.
It's not ordered a drink. Guinan comes up with, "Hey, gentlemen, I got this new drink from Frelkus 3. Would you like to give it a try?" Sure, why not? Data takes a swig and gives that response.
I believe this beverage has provided an emotional response.
Oh?
Geordi asked, "Well, what do you feel?" "I'm uncertain because I have a little experience in this." And they have a little exchange from emotions.
He takes another swig. Guinan's like, "Looks like he hates it." Yes! That's it! I hate this! Would you like some more? Please.
Please.
And as that interaction's going on, Picard walks into 10 forward and finds the Roman Emperor. Dr. Soren. To which they have their discussion because Soren really wants to get back to the observatory because his experiment that he's doing is on a timeline, a very strict timeline that he must complete in a matter of hours.
Timing is very important for my experiments. If it is not completed within 12 hours, years of research will be lost. And Picard responds with, "We'll do our best. If you'll excuse me," and he tries to leave. And then Soren begins the time talk of, they say time is a fire in which we burn. Right now, Captain, my time is running out. We leave so many things unfinished in our lives. I know you understand. I'll see what I can do.
And that really hits, and we don't exactly know why just yet, but you get that look on Picard's face of, "You motherfucker."
So now we're down at engineering. Worf and Riker talking about what they were researching on the observatory, which was trilithium. So it's an experimental compound the Romulans had been working on. Trilithium is a nuclear inhibitor. In theory, it could stop the fusion in any star.
And signal the woo flag.
This is the biggest bone I have to pick. Everything to do with stars in this is what...
Again, an episode stretched out to a movie similar to Star Trek The Motion Picture.
Yeah.
At which point, Data and Geordi are part of an away team going back through, looking for traces of trilithium themselves amongst the observatory. At which point, the entire time,
acting really weird.
The entire time, Data is laughing in the background. This constant chuckle and giggle at almost every turn. And
I get it.
You get what?
When you said to Commander Riker, the clown can stay, but the Ferengi in the gorilla suit has to go. What are you talking about? During the Farpoint mission, we were on the bridge and you told a joke. That was the punchline. I get it.
Funny. Very funny. Data, that was 7 years ago.
7 years ago. And then abruptly, LaForge says, "Wait, I think that there's a hidden door here. My visor's picking up something."
And now we're starting to get the dad jokes from Data. One, he opens up a servo actuator on his forearm, sets it, and then goes, "Open sesame!" And as the door opens, he stops, and it's like, I guess you could say I have a magnetic personality. It's like, okay, I understand you're trying to make it cringeworthy to a point, but did you really have to go that cringeworthy with it?
Jared, you said they're dad jokes.
True.
He's got a daughter now.
Well, at this point, he had already had Lol. So yeah. Data is into dad jokes.
So we find a torpedo. I think it's a torpedo, isn't it?
Now, that is a solar probe.
Oh, yep. Solar probe, where they're picking up traces of trilithium. And again, Data tells another little joke with his tricorder.
Yes, using the tricorder as a puppet.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Tricorder. You're very correct. And at that point is when you see Data having his emotional breakdown.
Well, I wouldn't call it an emotional breakdown. I would say it was an outright overload and exasperation of everything, because you get the contortions of the face going from extreme laughter to pain and anguish. Yeah. You really are getting that ultimate flood of everything. Think about if you had to, in the span of about 30 to 45 seconds, re-experience every emotion at every intensity you have ever experienced before.
And then after all of these seizures, you could call them, he stops, and Geordi asks if he's all right, and he says, "I believe the emotion chip has overloaded my positronic relay." So Geordi tries to say to call back to the Enterprise to leave to get Data back to the Enterprise, but
nothing.
In comes the Emperor.
Well, first off, you're getting nothing. You're getting no signal out, and to which Soren just casually waltzes in, and that doesn't tip a red flag for you there, Geordi?
Well, that didn't necessarily tip a red flag, but this should have.
Oh, well, that definitely should have. But keep in mind, that was also after Soren had knocked Geordi down.
Yeah.
But here's the fact that Soren asked for clearance to go. If he was given clearance to go, the away team would have been informed, hey, by the way, the subject matter expert of what's going on over there is going to be joining you or is going to be coming in after you. So his appearance would not be a surprise. We never got an inkling that he was actually given the permission to go.
Let's just forget about that.
Yeah.
Clearly,
we'll
clearly it didn't matter. It didn't matter. I mean, there was nothing suspicious about Soren just showing up. Clearly.
Yeah, not at all. Never.
And then he's got his weird, I need to move out of the way gun.
It's the ghetto disruptor, because you gotta shoot it from the side.
Oh, yeah. So, after we get this scene, I don't got a shot of it, but you've got Data on the ground cowering.
Yes.
Begging, please don't hurt me.
A true sense of extreme fear.
And then we cut
to Picard looking at a photo album in his quarters.
And Troy entering an extremely dark room. Which sets the mood, but really...
But it's a bit overkill. This scene is so difficult just to see who is where for no damn reason.
Yeah, this isn't the upper half of the face is shadowed because they're the evil person, or just the eyes are able to appear like the original series was when they were trying to be super serial. But yeah, this could have been much more well lit. Just again, being a pedant.
Yeah, you can get the sense of gravity and the emotionality of what's going on without such horrible lighting. Now, I understand they're kind of mimicking the light from the Yamagosa star coming into Picard's quarters, and okay, you can still have that and have some background lighting as well. Maybe you just didn't figure out how to do it. Well, that's your fault.
Yeah.
But this is where we get Picard telling the story about how his family lineage is actually rather well known, and at a lot of major instances in human history, a Picard has been involved. And between he and his brother, when his brother married and then had his son, Picard's nephew, Picard almost gave up on the thought of needing to be an active part of the propagation of the Picard family line. But that's when we find out.
As he's telling this story, you get the human emotional reaction.
Yeah, you get him breaking down as he tells Troy that Robert and his nephew died in a fire. So there is no living direct male heir to carry on the Picard name other than Jean-Luc at this point.
And he talks about from a small child, I can remember being told about my family line, the Picards that fought at Trafalgar, the Picard who won the Nobel Prize for Chemistry, the first Picards who settled a colony on Mars. And when Robert married and had a son, and that's when Troy has her true counselor moment, chimes in and says, you felt it was no longer your responsibility to carry on the family line. And this is where being a good counselor, it gives him something to latch onto, to continue. Because, I mean, that's really the goal, is to continue the conversation and don't let them shut down. And it did. As soon as he heard that, yes, you're right. That's exactly it. And you can kind of see his emotions change of, I'm not being irrational. I now have an explanation for my actions. And then as they're having that conversation, there is a sudden burst of light.
And then
Picard goes to the bridge.
And we're getting a level 10 shockwave from the sun, and the sun dimming as all fusion is breaking down.
A quantum implosion has occurred in the Amagosa star. All fusion is breaking down. How... I don't know. I have not done the research to see how big the Amagosa star is. But I know that stars are big. And they got a lot of atoms in them. And I would think that would take a minute
And not
to stop fusion.
And not to mention, with the distance away that they were, what about the delay between the actual flashpoint and when it had actually occurred, and that whole delayed nature in visual observations at that scale?
And not even that. 15 minutes, maybe an hour before this scene right here, somebody should have come over the comms and said, sir, we've had a solar probe initiated from the Amargosa Observatory. It's on its way to the star. Oh, shoot it out of the sky.
Yeah, how the fuck is no one catching this stuff and reporting it to the commander?
Oh, maybe it got there real quick because, reasons.
Oh, we'll get to that one in a little bit.
Oh, God. Hey, the sun is local, small and local. Flat Earthers are right. Small and local.
Anyways, so we get a interesting view of the bubble from the collapsing star and the observatory.
Because this is how an explosion happens in space. It's not a fucking wave. As much as I love 5.
6.
6. Sorry, 6. It's not an energy wave. It's an energy bubble.
It's not. You're less likely to have a shaped charge like you did in Star Trek 6, which, again, visually stunning, scientifically inaccurate. That propagation, more scientifically accurate, but the cause behind it was way worse.
And then we get this weird transition to Soren fidgeting with Geordi's visor. And the uncloaking of a Klingon ship. Riker beams over aboard the observatory. Data is paralyzed.
With fear.
Soren and what's that?
He's paralyzed with fear.
Yeah. Soren and LaForge have not yet left until they are unable to stop it. And at the last second, right before the shockwave hits, the Enterprise GTFO.
Yep. Oh, hang on. So back to the comment you made before about Scotty. How's this? It was today, June 6th, when Scotty, James Doohan, as a captain of the Royal Canadian Artillery, participated in the D-Day landings and was injured.
That's when he lost his finger, yeah. Good catch on that ugly German truth. Good catch.
Right. So, the Enterprise gets the fuck out of Dodge just in time to watch as the observatory is completely demolished, and then we cut to the most stereotypical and repurposed, reused Klingon set in all of Star Trek. The bridge of a Klingon warship.
That's the only set they ever made of a Klingon ship.
Mostly. For the series, yes.
Mostly, yeah. You see it a lot. You see that a lot. So now we meet the Klingons.
We are reintroduced.
Lursa?
We are reintroduced to. That's Betor. Lurser's the taller one.
Okay.
At which Soren walks in. They're trying to be like, "Hey, great to see you. How's everything going?" And he strikes her on the mouth and knocks her back.
Punches her in the face.
Well, it was a very Kirk-esque heel of the hand punch. Not so much a punch, more of a strike. And
I do love her response, though.
Oh, yes. I hope for your sake you are initiating some sort of mating ritual.
You got careless. The Romulans came looking for the missing trilithium.
Impossible. We left no one alive.
Yeah, other than a Romulan body.
No. They
where
were
stole
saying,
it from.
yeah, where they got the trilithium. They said they left no one alive where they got it from. Still, the Romulans were able to track it, and they came to the station looking for it. If it hadn't been for the Enterprise, but they didn't find it.
This is a short scene, and after we've introduced that now Soren is dealing with the Romulans, we go back to the Enterprise to find out who Soren is. He's an Elorian, over 300 years old. He lost his entire family during the Borg invasion that destroyed his homeworld. Soren escaped with a handful of other refugees aboard a ship known as the Lakul. That ship was later destroyed by some kind of energy ribbon, but Soren and 46 others were rescued by the Enterprise B.
Guess who else was there? And I will give them that. That was a nice little touch of that. Guess who else is there? And you get the transition to this. of Picard in Guinan's quarters talking about Soren.
That is a name I haven't heard in a long time.
And through this, we do get the exposition of what Soren is after, why he's after it, and what it is that they're actually ultimately dealing with. And that's essentially a rip in space and time that takes you to another place where time has no meaning. And whatever you experience is what you want and make of it. Think of a heaven that you create. That's essentially what the Nexus is. That rift. That break in reality.
It's like being inside joy. As if it was something tangible. And Picard asked, would you destroy a star for it? And Guinan says, you know, if he's obsessed enough, he's a very dangerous man and would do anything. And she gives him a warning. If you go, you're not going to care about anything. Not this ship, not Soren, not nothing. All you'll want is to stay in the Nexus, and you're not going to want to come back. So we now have the major plot line of what we're fighting against is somebody trying to get back to the Nexus.
Trying to get back to happiness.
Yep.
Now, I'll go ahead and mention here, this scene, at this point, really didn't make a lot of sense, especially with what follows right after from this area, which we'll cover both of those right now, where Soren is essentially chiding Geordi as the way pretty much every non-Federation person has of, don't you want to be normal? Don't you want to fit in more? Don't you want to alleviate this affliction of yours? And Soren doesn't get it. Geordi has had multiple opportunities to do just that and has turned down every single one. And just after this interaction, you get Soren going back to the bridge, and one of the Duras sisters asks how he was coming along with everything with LaForge. To which he responds with, his heart just wasn't in it. Now, with what we actually get from the presentation of this movie is like, why the hell would he say that? But when you read the original script and also get into some of the deleted scenes, Soren outright fucking tortures LaForge to get as much information as he can. Yes, he actually put a cardiac implant in that was a torture device to cause cardiac pain to Geordi during the questioning. That's the reason why those scenes ended up being cut, because it was deemed too dark and too brutal for a Star Trek movie.
Damn.
But
So
while all of that is going on, back on the Enterprise, we get Picard and Data in the astrometrics lab, which beautiful set. Like,
Hey, Jared, I'll be back in just 1 minute.
Yep. We get them going through and trying to trace the path of this energy ribbon, the access point to the Nexus. And through this, they're able to access a whole bunch of reports of everything that's been going on as a result of the destruction of the Yamagosa star that they had just narrowly gotten out of. Now, among those, you have a ship that had to make navigational changes. You have a bunch of different readings that were fluctuating off of the norm. And Picard's like, wait, go back to the ship. Why did the ship have to make a navigational change? Now, this is where part of the whole science of what was going on with the trilithium device in the sun comes into question. Due to the destruction of the Yamagosa star, the gravitational constant in that sector had been altered, requiring all ships to correct, or else their navigation will be dramatically off. At which point, Picard asks if, in the calculation of the path of the ribbon, did the computer take this navigational change to in effect when it calculated the path? Data responds no. So with that, they recalculate and they see exactly what Soren is doing with the stars. Beep, beep, beep. I think, yeah, head to the next one.
So
He's
if we could just back
shifting.
up for 1 second. Of the effects of the destruction of the Amargosa star, again, being a pedant, and I'm looking at ugly German truths, making sure the sun's alteration of navigation was not a stupid idea, but they made it look like it was gravity related, and the implosion of the sun does not. The implosion of the sun does not change gravity, even if the planet are around the sun. So that, again, this is me being a pedant, is the only way you change gravity
Is by changing mass.
is by changing and removing mass. Now, yes, it can condense it, it can outgas it, it can spread it out a little bit. It's not that fast, and it's not that drastic. There's no way. I mean, even if the Amargosa star in a heartbeat had been turned into a black hole,
The amount of
none
mass
of the
is still
planets
the same.
orbiting it, the planets orbiting it wouldn't change their orbits because the amount of mass is still there.
Yeah, and I agree that had they gone with something subspace related, much less of an issue. But and back to all that, we get that.
I get the plot point. It's easier to say it that way, but for somebody who enjoys the science of it, frustrating.
Yeah. But so they stumble upon what Soren is actually doing. Since every ship that has tried to fly into the energy ribbon has been destroyed, instead of trying to go to the ribbon, he's bringing the ribbon to him. Now, before we get to this bit here, we did get a touch of humanity both from Picard and Data earlier in this, where Data is having a hard time completing his duties. He's having a hard time staying focused. And Picard rightfully lets him know that's part of having emotions, is learning how to deal with them. Which Data is racked with guilt, regret, and everything possible because of what happened to Geordi, and how he knows physically he should have been able to do something, but he didn't because he was too afraid. And Picard tells him learning to deal with and handle these emotions is part of being human.
And like a good Starfleet officer, Data continues his duties.
So they end up finding that with Soren deflecting the path of the ribbon, they ask, does the ribbon pass nearby any M-class planets, trying to figure out where is he going next. To which they find the Viridian system. Well, it passes close to Viridian 3, but not quite close enough. To which the question comes up then, what if Soren was to do the same thing to the Viridian star? What would happen to the path then? And look at that, right through Viridian 3. Which, as we find out, Viridian 3, uninhabited. Viridian 4, however, pre-warp industrial society. That's talking whole shit.
230 million.
Which, kind of small when you think about it for a industrial society. But you know what? That's still a lot of people, a lot of innocent people at risk.
That will be vaporized.
Because one person wants to get back to his happy place.
I would like to comment about the extremely eccentric orbits of planets around this star system. It's a little weird.
It's almost like a multi-tiered gyro trying to remain balanced.
Yeah. But, yeah, side point. So, then, based upon that information, they need to get to the Viridian system immediately. And during the journey there, we go back to the bird of prey. Oh, and this is where the comment is. Did you get anything from the human? No. His heart wasn't in it.
Yeah.
And they
really odd statement, unless you were aware of that scene that never made it to film.
And what was kind of neat in this scene is the standoff, the blind standoff. As they got there, they recognize that the Enterprise is coming, and the Enterprise calls out to it, "We know you're there."
Yeah, exactly.
The Klingons realize, yeah, we can't really hide from him for too long, and they decloak. As my children scream at each other in the living room.
Anyways, so we get a nice, again, stock shot, but dressed up nicely stock shot, of a bird of prey arriving and decloaking, already with the wings in attack position.
A little hint?
Maybe. Something that the bridge crew should have picked up on? Definitely.
So at this point, the Klingons and the bridge crew and Picard start demanding having Geordi back. Soren wants Picard, and Picard agrees to an exchange.
Well, they are negotiating with the Duras sisters. So the Duras sisters are because at this point, before they decloak, Soren had already beamed down to the planet. Because it says, well, Soren's not with us anymore. And it works out to where we'll exchange for LaForge. Exchange for what? Which Data initially offers himself, to which Picard, being more of a strategist on this, says, no, me. But first, you send me down to speak with Soren. And the Dora sisters make a good point. A captain would make a far more valuable hostage.
So Picard, he agreed. Says, have Dr. Crusher meet me in transporter room 3. You have the bridge, number 1. Maybe he should have given, specific instructions. Don't destroy it. Take care of it. I like the paint job. Something.
But we need a new model. I mean, the filming model just was okay, but not quite up to snuff, which was also part of why they did a lot of the lighting the way they did for the hero shots of the Enterprise D.
Do you know, did they have any physical models for this,
yes.
Or was it CGI?
This was the last use of the physical model of the Galaxy class.
Okay, and was it still the TV series model, or did they remake it for the movie?
So keep in mind, for the TV series, they had 2 size models, the large and the small. A lot of the shots we see are the large model. That was the one that was higher quality, that they could dress up enough to get it to be feature film quality visual. And that was also the one that the saucer separated on. The smaller 6-foot model didn't. That was just one solid piece. Which is also part of why in the series they went from... they started using the 6-foot model because it was easier to manipulate, cheaper to film, and they stopped doing saucer separations. Hand in hand.
How many times did they do now, are you...
3.
So you're talking for the logistics of filming.
Yep.
Not Star Trek world.
Yes. In the series shown on screen, there were 3 saucer separations. 2 of them in season 1, and then the best of both worlds.
I'm going through my slides right now. I think I might need to jump soon.
Yep.
I might have screwed up my numbering. But, so the Picard agrees. They go down to the transporter room, and Picard disappears as Geordi reappears and then immediately collapses. And which is why Dr. Crusher needed to be there. So they start tending to LaForge. And then we move to the surface.
Which looks oddly like a rock formation in the hills of Southern California. Oh wait, that's right. It was filmed in a national park. Never mind.
All right, give me a second. I want to make sure I jump to the right next slide. Screwed up a little bit here. How the hell did that happen?
Poor note taking.
It's timeline of screenshots.
Fair point.
Okay, there we go.
So we get to see the latest iteration of the solar probe termed weapon by Soren that was cloaked atop of that perch. You know, just because you have a technology doesn't mean you always have to use that technology.
You never know when it's going to come in handy for a plot point.
Yeah, but the sake of doing it, just for the sake of doing it, come on.
It wouldn't be Star Trek if they didn't.
Fair point.
So, during this exchange, we've got more of the subplot and the intention of Soren and the reason for what he's doing. And Picard says, "What you're about to do, Soren, is no different than what the Borg did, destroying your homeworld. You're killing millions too, or they killed millions too, including your wife and child."
Nice
And
try.
Soren, nice try. You know, there was a time when I wouldn't hurt a fly, and then the Borg came, and they showed me that if there was one constant in this whole universe, it's death. Afterwards, I began to realize it really doesn't matter. We're all going to die sometime. It's just a question of how and when. You will too, Captain. Aren't you beginning to feel time gaining on you? It's like a predator. It's stalking you. Oh, you can try to outrun it with doctors, medicine, new technologies, but in the end, time is going to hunt you down and make the kill.
But in the Nexus, the Predator has no teeth. Time has no meaning there. And that's where he is affirming what Guinan had said before of his motivations, is that the Nexus is self-initiated, perpetual joy. And that's what it is. Wherever you want to go, wherever your mind wants to take you, that's where you'll be. And as they're doing all of this, Geordi is getting his checkout aboard the Enterprise, in which there's more to be done, and Dr. Crusher is like, "Okay, Data, you can go now. No, really, Data, you can go now." To which Data goes back to his duties aboard up at the op station on the bridge. And we get one of the more oddly satisfying bits from the movie. To where...
It's one of the nerdiest, dumbest, but you love it.
Yes, you do. Because as Data's going to his stations is... Riker lets Data know we're having a hard time getting readings through the planet's atmosphere. Can you help us do that and scan for life forms? I love scanning for life forms. Life forms. You tiny little life form.
Forms.
Where
Life forms.
Where are you?
You. It's dumb. But yeah, you love it.
It's Trek. For all that's going on, that is a quintessential Trek moment, especially with everyone behind. Like, what the fuck is Data doing?
What the fuck is happening? And then we actually cut over to the bird of prey again, but we find out that they're spying through Geordi's visor. And Geordi's now wandering around the ship, and
you get the comment, must be the only engineer in Starfleet who doesn't go to engineering.
I mean, why would he want to?
And finally, he goes to engineering. And he passes by this shot that gives the
Pedantic
modulation.
Pedantic point number 66.4. Because when does this take place? This takes place after the Borg incursion events, right? After?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean they need to change the modulation routinely, otherwise the Borg will adapt.
Yeah, that was implemented as a standard thing on Federation shields after the interaction with the Borg.
Now, see, that was a firmware update, and Geordi had been putting it off. And he keeps clicking.
Geordi was the one who developed it.
He didn't want to take the systems down, so every afternoon, would you like to do the firmware update? Geordi would click on "Do it tonight," and then it never happened.
Because then Windows would shut down before it get a chance to do its update.
Yep.
Now, again, the real reason is we want to destroy the ship to get a new one, and we need to come up with a reason on why a 50-year-old bird of prey would be able to beat a Galaxy-class starship.
And once they've identified the frequency modulation, what are you able to do?
Make the shields essentially non-existent.
So, in a Star Trek scientific world, explain this to me.
So what it is when the shields are operating at a particular frequency, anything other than that frequency, you get your interference pattern, you get your destructive interference. That's how the shields actually work, is based off that principle. Energy dissipation and signal destruction through combination. So with the Klingon torpedoes being frequency matched exactly to the shields, passes right through.
Frequency of what?
The actual energy output of the device. Because keep in mind, photon torpedoes do have their own energy field around it.
You're talking woo now.
No, there is actual radiated emissions from it, which is why you actually get the colors of the device.
I'll accept your woo. Just reading through text comment. So is that the time that you should attack the ship, Tech?
Yeah, pretty much. So that is the in-universe explanation on why they were able to, is you have that bit of espionage, that bit of subverse doing, and then you have the Enterprise firing back as best it could, But for one of the strongest ships in the fleet, it can't get through the shields of an older bird of prey.
And this is when it comes in very handy to have a Klingon on your crew.
Yeah, because the question is there any weaknesses with that old bird of prey? Well, yes, the Class B-12 was taken out of service due to, is it faulty plasma coils?
Defective plasma coils.
Yeah. How can we use that to our advantage? I don't know. The plasma coils are part of the cloaking device.
The plasma coils are part of the cloaking device.
And what do we all know happens when a Klingon ship or Romulan cloaks and decloaks? The shields drop, making them vulnerable.
Because they don't have enough power out. Yeah, they don't have enough power output to do both at the same time. Correct?
Yeah. Well, yes, it is. It's
Cannot
a
run the
switching.
shield and the cloak at the same time.
Yeah, it's a transition between the two.
And Ugly German Truth, he's a tactical officer. You've got to know your enemy.
And during the Klingon Civil War back in season 4, he did leave Starfleet and serve with his brother. So
yeah, Riker should have known that.
Yeah,
but it's a good way to bring in Worf that doesn't have a big role in this movie, other than getting knocked off a boat.
Yeah, although I will say this, I think Worf is really happy with the update to the bridge that they did for the movie. He finally has a chair.
And then he has people getting blown over his head.
The
Klingons continue to shoot.
Actually, at this point, this is where, right before this, Riker says to Data, is there any way that we can trigger the plasma coils? To which Data is like, yes, if we send a low resonance ionic pulse, it'll trigger the coils and activate their cloaking device. Excellent thought, Commander. Runs over, starts doing his thing. Does it, ready, pulse is activated, and then we get this wonderful shot of, oh shit. We are cloaking! What? Our shields are down! Fire.
Yeah. The comparison between these two, the absolute oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck, to fuck you.
Ugly German Truce.
That is a glorious transition.
Hang on. Ugly German Truce. Yes, the Science 1, Science 2, Research 1. There were 5 stations back there. It was either 2 or 3 Science and 2 Engineering. But yes, those stations have chairs that tuck into the wall behind. But at the actual bar behind the captain, there was no chair there until this movie. And then they blow up the ship.
The bar was higher too, wasn't it?
No, the bar looks like it was higher. But what it actually is they added a couple steps and they raised the 3 chairs in front of it.
Okay.
So of all the bridge changes that they did from TNG to the movie, you have the tactical position having a chair now. You have the raising of the command deck of where the captain's chair is located, being raised with the addition of a couple steps. You also have, additional workstations added in onto the sides of the bridge to both the port and starboard, 2 stations each side. So where there was originally just the padded paneling before, there are now actual stations there before, whereas if you go back and look as they're coming in off the turbo lift, you can see them. To where when they walk down the ramp, instead of it just being a wall there, more workstations.
So then, back to one of my favorite scenes from the entire movie.
You mean the regurgitate?
What's that?
You mean the regurgitated scene from Star Trek 6?
Oh yeah. But
We
Riker
don't have
sells
surgery
it.
though.
In this scene, the scene coming up, Riker is the captain. He fills that seat. You can't deny it.
Yep.
His actions, his command, his control, he is the captain of the Enterprise.
Well, he was putting on weight at this point.
Shh.
I heard you guys talking about the toupee, and this is the girdle scene.
Ah, okay, there's the girdle connection.
So then, with that command of fire, it's awesome that they shoot from an aft torpedo, because you don't get that very often in these scenes. It's always head to head.
Well, it's not like they were shitting on the Klingons.
I'm somebody in the torpedo bay, pulled out a Sharpie, and said, "Suck it, Klingons," right before they loaded the tube.
Yeah. So, and then we get that wonderful fuck.
To be or not to be.
Almost.
But once again, we went from, oh fuck, fuck you, oh fuck.
Then the next one, yeah,
Well,
color alter.
third time?
Color no. So in timeline of when they were using this material, this footage, it was initially used in Star Trek 6, made its next appearance here. I don't know where else they used it, but it had been used elsewhere. But what I find funny is the view that they were giving from the bridge of the Klingon ship to the Enterprise gave the illusion that they were hit somewhere forward with the photon torpedo, and yet this one's blowing up from the spine, which is where the final torpedoes that hit the bird of prey in Star Trek 6 landed.
Yeah.
Hey, this was the height of the reduce, reuse, recycle movement, man.
True. I will give you that. But so with the bird of prey taking
side
out.
point, different movie. On the reuse of stuff, during the filming of the original Top Gun, the agreement they had with the U.S. Navy on what they were able to do and what they weren't able to do, they only fired 2 actual missiles.
Yep.
From birds during the filming of Top Gun. Every other missile firing was model. And apparently the Navy, when they actually screened the film, started to raise a stink because they thought they had fired more than they were authorized because it was that realistic.
Do you have a good visual artist working on it? That's what happens.
And that's, you don't have to, reduce, reuse, recycle. You blow up a different ship. But anyways, on to the next very fun scene.
Yes. Oh.
So now Riker has partially destroyed the Enterprise that has been entrusted into his care by the captain. So everything's fine. The Enterprise is fine. Everything is fine. Down to the surface.
Where Picard, a little bit childish, just kind of chucking rocks around.
Don't you have anything better to do?
No, actually, I don't.
No. What do you expect me to do? Pick up a new hobby? Oh, my new hobby is screwing with you. And around the rock that I don't have a screenshot of here is a force field Soren had generated. But the force field, this is pretty ingenious. I like this. The force field, it would have been nice if it would have been a tower, or you could have seen where the force field generator was, because the force field came down and snugly sat where the ground was. But there was this little hollow cavity below, directly where the force field was, that was not covered by force field. So I accept this plot point.
Yeah. This was well done and accurate in that sense. And then just
Wait.
Yeah.
Does it pass the mind of Dodge test about gravity?
Don't make me hurt you. But
I couldn't resist.
yeah, but so then we jump back to the Enterprise D, where just like every major issue, there's an issue with the magnetic interlocks. And then all of a sudden, coolant leak. We have a coolant leak. Everybody out of here.
I love this. I love this. It went from it's fixable, we've got this, we can figure this out. And then in every chief engineer's mind, there's a list of things that will destroy the ship. Period. And when you see that thing, you react. And Geordi did that. He recognized that one thing, that there's nothing I can do to fix this. And the immediate response, save lives.
And he's being a responsible officer?
Yeah. Well, and you also have some people nitpick on this, and where at this point it's like, well, why don't they just eject the core? It was actually, if I remember right, and you have the script there, I do remember at some point in the damage report of what's going on that Geordi gives at this scene, he mentions that the ejection system was knocked offline.
I'm not. Let's see. So it must have been that last torpedo. LaForge of the bridge. We've got a problem down here. The magnetic interlocks have been ruptured. Explosion occurs. Let me see if I can find.
Because I remember at one point, it was mentioned by Geordi that a bunch of systems were knocked offline, and I'm pretty sure the core ejection was one of them.
It might be. I'm not finding it right now, though.
Yeah.
Which would make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, what are the magnetic interlocks?
That is controlling the antimatter flow. And now what happens when antimatter and matter get in close proximity and into contact? Complete annihilation.
So now he says LaForge's response is coolant leak. We have a coolant leak. Everybody let's out. Let's go. Let's get out of here. Everybody let's go. Move it. LaForge bridge. We have a new problem. We're 5 minutes from a warp core breach. There's nothing I can do. There may have been other conversations that we're missing about the ejection of the warp core, but this is an assumption that you can make that there's some reason you can't eject. It's not something that's far-fetched.
Yeah. So,
all right.
With that, evacuation starts and relocating the kids. Now, here's a problem I had.
Why are there kids on the ship?
Not just why are there kids on the ship in the first place? Different issue. Why are they portraying this as if there were kids in the secondary hull?
Oh, good call.
Because kids and civilians were restricted to the primary hull unless their job required them to be in the engineering and storage spaces.
There's no reason they should have been in the lower section. Yeah, good call. All right, and then as we get the beginning of the evacuation, we go back down to the surface. More bickering back and forth with Picard and Soren, and we get the shot of the saucer separation. Is this the second or third time we've seen this?
This would be...
Did it happen?
Fourth. If you're including the series, this is the fourth separation that we see, because we see separation in Encounter at Farpoint, and then about halfway through season 1, Geordi was given command, and when he came back to, and they picked up Picard, he is like, okay, command's back to you, and Picard was like, no, I gave you a complete ship. That's how I expect it returned. So Geordi remained in command until they met up with the saucer section and reconnected. Both of those were season 1. Okay. Then you have Best of Both Worlds. They separated for that against the Borg. And then here.
I feel like there's one more.
Again, Riker fits in that chair.
Are you saying he's getting fat?
Are you saying Picard was fat?
No, just a big personality. But yet, here we are. The warp core goes critical, and the star drive section is gone, which knocks all sorts of shit offline and haywire on the saucer section that hadn't had time to get far enough away.
And bad for them. They're in the orbit of a planet, which, gravity's a thing. Fuck you, Riley. Which will make things go down. And then we have the next glorious scene from Data.
Oh, shit.
Was that the first curse?
I think so.
And then we get the lovely scene of the saucer section re-entering. And now I don't have it anymore, but I used to have a bunch of technical manuals. And in the technical manual for the D, actually had the procedure for the landing of the saucer section after separation, emergency landing.
Yep.
And it showed like the S-shaped swerves going through the atmosphere to bleed off energy, and then to land on some kind of flat plane. So it was kind of neat that they'd actually, before this movie had came out, they actually had it in the technical manuals.
Yep. And I actually used to have the toy model version that had the battle damage.
So speaking of that, let me go back over here. Turn this off, stop sharing. I don't remember where I got this, but this is my Enterprise D in all its cast glory. And it separates.
Ooh.
Fancy smancy.
Put you back together before Riker can crash you again. Right, where are we at? That one. All right, so we get the glorious scenery of the saucer section entering. And total War of the Worlds footage. Because that looks like one of the saucers from War of the Worlds.
At first, yes. An interesting thing with this is all practical effect. From this point on, they actually created a model landscape and actually took the saucer section of the filming model and crashed it intentionally like that.
Was the saucer section originally separatable, or did they actually have to destroy it that way?
So that's why they went with the larger filming model, is because it could separate. They literally destroyed the model to film this stuff, which is part of why we ended up with the Enterprise E in the next movie.
So finally it does come to rest after little bungs and bruises.
Oh, and Ugly German Truce has it right. Where they filmed that crash sequence was outdoors in the parking lot at ILM.
That's cool. I gotta look for the videos of that. And now we have the nice jagged, transparent aluminum, or broken force field. I'm not sure which it would be.
Well, that's another question. During the landing sequence, you could see a lot of windows breaking.
So much glass.
Aren't all the windows supposed to be transparent aluminum or some other form of transparent metal, not frickin' glass?
So then, does that mean that on the E, they're force fields and not transparent aluminum? Because I know in um, First Contact, it's force fields.
On some of the openings, yes. Some, not all.
Okay. Yeah, because that's risky.
Yeah, power loss, you're fucked.
Wah! Everybody gets sucked out into the nothingness. Now, this is some nice matte painting background here. But practical, clearly practical. So I will give them an A for effort on on the practical effects.
Yes, this is where you headed out of order, because that was the initial. That was the initial, and then that's in the medical. But then going back a few. So now that the Enterprise has been destroyed, Picard has gotten through and survived the disruptor attack around it, and meets Soren up on this passageway, and then commence Old Man Fight number 1.
How can you see the ribbon, but the gravitational effects of the sun are going to affect the ribbon instantaneously and whip it halfway across the solar system to you?
It didn't deflect the path that much, not halfway across the solar system, but from the orbit
of the planet.
From the orbit of one planet to the next. So there was a shift, but it's still before the battle. And what's relevant to this is a question of the timing. A launch from of the solar probe from the planet's surface to the sun was supposed to take about what? 10 seconds?
It's a 10-second rocket ride. This is about a 10-second rocket ride right there.
So apparently the solar probe is going at warp speed upon launch.
So as soon as that thing clears the tower, shouldn't anything below it be vaporized?
Compressed.
It's one hell of a probe.
That's what she said.
And then we have the ridiculous combination of scenes. Yeah, he wants to see the probe going up, so he blocks the sun. I don't see any shadows there.
Yeah, the sun's on the other side of Picard. Why? Huh?
We should do
Picard is looking at the ribbon, not the sun.
Okay. But then why is he blocking the sun?
But he put his hand up as if he was blocking the sun, too.
Could be causing glare off to his left,
And then 10 seconds into the rocket launch, that's a wicked fast rocket. And the sun instantly goes dark. So we're not even talking about a 10-second transit time of the rocket. It was 10 seconds for whatever to occur and the light to return to them.
They're on the front edge of the habitable zone? I don't know.
How small is the habitable zone at that point? And mind you, there are 2 planets in the habitable zone of this solar system. Yeah, a lot of fuckery for the sake of moving the plot along. Gotta move it along.
It's now dark, and suddenly the ribbon is really fucking huge in the sky. And instantaneously moved into the path. And the gorgeous scene of Soren standing on top being taken away, and then barely you can see Picard down in the corner also disappearing. And then I remember as I watched this movie, you're not thinking about the Enterprise at this point. You're thinking, oh shit, what happened to Picard? What happened here? And then you're reminded.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of people there.
Now, here's something to think about, though, too. The ribbon was going through a swath of the planet. Picard and Soren were on that swath of the planet, daylight side. The Enterprise was also on the daylight side of the planet. Why the fuck weren't they picked up?
I'm thinking that they were actually on Viridian 4. They crashed on Viridian 4.
They were the battle took place in orbit of Viridian 3.
Right, but that doesn't mean that the gravity of the planet could have slinged it off to Viridian 4.
You're stretching.
I'm stretching.
I
I'm
recognize your efforts.
I'm not saying it's accurate. I'm just
But-
saying that would be the reason that they wouldn't be picked up by the Riven.
But then why are they showing Viridian 3 being destroyed and the Enterprise being destroyed at the same time? Viridian 4 is in a farther out orbit.
Well, they go from Viridian 3 where they're getting picked up by the Nexus. This very well could be Viridian 4.
Where are we at? I'm trying to find where they crashed and where the sun is. So they could be on the rim, because my question is, shouldn't they have been destroyed head on from the shockwave? Because if they're directly in the line of the sun, but they're at sunset or sunrise, so they could have been destroyed like this. But either way, a crap ton of people died. For now. And then we go into the
Brainery
weird...
sides with me.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Really? I never thought of it that way. I thought that he crashed on the same planet.
Well, if you think of it, Viridian 3 is pretty much uninhabited. Doesn't mean that there isn't plant life or fauna, but the way they show it and depict it is it's more of like a desert planet.
Just that area. But when you go back, and look, they're in orbit of Viridian 3 when the Klingons show up, and you are seeing areas of lush vegetation.
Right. Yes, the kaleidoscope of blue and red.
Second, I'm Googling it.
Because I'm looking at the script and they don't say what
Viridian
planet
3.
it is.
According to Wikipedia, the saucer section crash landed on the surface of the planet Viridian 3 and had to be abandoned. So saith Wikipedia. So, anyways, moving on. We have the weird dreamlike kaleidoscope scenery. Not sure what's going on. Picard and children.
But whose children? And whose wife? And then you get a touching moment with Picard recognizing Renee amongst the kids, who is his his nephew, his brother's child. And I will give them a little bit of this on the touch of that Christmas ornament, which looks like a star. It illuminates, it shines, it twinkles, and then it dims and gives off what looks to be like a shockwave. Then collapses back and goes through it goes through the cycle again and again.
It is. It's a very subtle reminder. And then I don't think I have a screenshot of it, but in another scene you can see that all of the globe ornaments are doing the same thing.
Yeah. And
after he recognizes this, he realizes this isn't real.
I don't belong here. And in pops the shadow of Guinan.
How?
Keep in mind, she was ripped from it, pulled from it. A portion of her was left. So with that being the case, shouldn't there also be a portion of Soren in there as well?
Yeah,
well,
like
when
where
he
do
enters, he could become more whole again.
Where do you draw that line?
Where do you draw the line at the whether or not the transporter is actually a suicide booth?
We all know it's a suicide booth.
No, the suicide booths are from Futurama.
Where do you think they got the idea from? Simpsons did it.
My wife just delivered me food, so I'll click through. You guys talk while I eat.
Hold on, what's the food?
It's spicy chicken nuggety things, fries, and corn.
Bring enough for all of us?
Oh shit.
Here, let me. I'll leave it up. I was gonna turn on my camera and share it with you guys, but that's just cruel.
I do it all the time on BTW. What are you talking about?
This he does. So with Picard getting this realization of what's going on, and in the conversation with Guinan that he meets up with, he decides, oh yeah, time has no meaning here. I can go back to Viridian 3 before the launch and stop Soren. I have a better idea. Let's hit the reset button on the game and go back to the last checkpoint. That's essentially what he's doing. But Guinan mentions, I'm already there. I can't go with you, but there's someone else here who, by his view, he also just got here. And that's where we get this introduction.
So if... Logical hula hoops, let's figure this out. Guinan can't exit the Nexus because she's already in this timeline because she's already exited. So if you've been in the Nexus, your shadow can stay there. But if you haven't exited, you can exit at any time. You just don't know it.
Yep.
Okay.
So that we start to get a introduction where Kirk is chopping wood at a cabin and Picard walks up and you get this beginning of the passing of the torch. View. Oh, it is. Is that supposed to be Montana?
I don't know, but it looks like Yosemite to me.
Yeah, it would be that area because Kirk kind of has a thing for that sort of area because what mountain was it that he was climbing that he almost died off of? Oh, yeah.
El Capitan?
Yes. To say he has a death wish would be a bit of an understatement, especially seeing as how a wonderful deleted scene that would have made a little more sense but would have made the movie runtime a tad bit longer than it needed to be was Kirk was actually late to the christening and launch of the Enterprise B. The reason why he was late is because he decided, I'm going to parachute jump from orbit.
What?
Oh, you don't remember that part of those bits of the deleted
scenes.
Yeah.
No.
Yes, what was supposed to be interlaced with the champagne bottle going through space was someone in a jumpsuit skydiving, essentially. But where
like they do in the Kelvin timeline.
Yeah,
Star Trek.
Think Kelvin timeline, but not as flashy of a suit and a little more dated on the costuming. And what it was Kirk skydiving from an orbital platform. I feel ashamed
not knowing this.
Yeah, that was the original, and it was supposed to be he lands, he's like, oh my god, I was this close to my target, that was great. Yeah, but we gotta get going, Captain, we're running late for the launch of the Enterprise B, and he's like, essentially like a child, like, aw, but do we have to? That was fun.
Ugly German Truth says, they also did the same thing in Voyager when B'Elanna had her death wish.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Death also has got a cease and desist against Kirk to stop stalking it.
Oh, nice. But yeah, so you get that. So we get this interaction, the interplay between the two eras of captains, which, let's face it, for the longest time, that was the argument amongst Trek fans. Kirk or Picard. And in that, Kirk is just trying to go about his day, like, almost like he's half listening. Cooking up the Katarian eggs, recognizes his old dog who apparently had passed away a few years earlier during his retirement. And then it finally clicks to Kirk. This isn't the future. This is the past. This is my past. This is this many years ago when I told Antonia I was going back to Starfleet. Not this time. Not again. I'm going to do things different. Ends up walking through what should have been the bedroom door, but ends up in a barn. Wonder what this ends up being. And Picard follows through and says, this isn't your bedroom. No, it's not. It's better. Because where Kirk ended up taking them was further back into his time to the day he actually met Antonia and says, I can do it right from day one. And Kirk mounts a horse, rides off, and amongst all this time, Picard had been trying to explain to him, this isn't real. This is part of a different type of reality type of thing. Tried explaining what the Nexus was and getting the base framework, but not much else. Which gives us some lovely views of the Californian scenery. And then it comes up across this point where Kirk jumps across a small ravine, a small crevasse, and he jumps back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then Picard finally catches up to him, and Kirk is like, I must have jumped that thing 50 times, and every time it scared me, except this one. Because this time, I know it's not real. And off up in the distance, they hear something and they look, and there's the silhouette of a seemingly beautiful woman on a horse, to which Picard asks, Antonia? And Kirk responds, yes, but not this time. This isn't real. What was that name of the planet you were talking about? Viridian 3? Let me guess, the odds are against us, chances are slim, and high probability that we're not going to make it. To which, yeah, pretty much got it spot on. And this is where, in my opinion, the best moment, the best line of the movie, hands down, comes right here. Kirk asks
Captain
Picard, huh? Yeah, asks him, close to retirement?
I'm not planning on it.
Good. Don't let them transfer you. Don't let them retire you. Don't let them do anything that takes you off the bridge of that ship. Because while you're there, you can make a difference.
Then come back with me. Help me stop Soren. Make a difference again. Kirk's response, who am I to argue with the captain of the Enterprise?
And they ride off, they get the flash, and it's almost, again, like a video game, back to a checkpoint.
Revert to last save point.
Yeah. Now, actually, go back 2 screenshots. Actually, no, go back to the one before this one. Interesting production note. It actually took them a few days to film all these scenes with the horses. Well, lighting is kind of an issue. There was an interesting bit of advice that came up on how to make the time riding the horses more comfortable. The piece of advice that was given was, wear women's underwear. And take a guess who gave that advice, from which person to which person.
That had to have been Shatner.
Shatner to Picard. Not to sully the vision and the mental image of Picard, of Kirk and everything, but Kirk knew well enough to wear women's underwear when riding horseback.
You know, I'm not going to criticize him for saying that women's underwear is comfortable, because, you know,
I wouldn't
maybe
know.
it is, and I'm not going to admit to anything else here today, but, you know, maybe it is.
All right, so we go back through the quick replay. We got the saucer of the Enterprise crashing to the surface of Viridian 3. You got Picard climbing up to meet up with Soren again. Except now
and then
things
old man
are different.
Fight number 2.
Yes. At which point Soren gets away at in that moment, and the question is, who's going to do what? To which Picard is going to go to the launcher. Kirk is going to go after Soren. And interesting thing, when the two of them show up and pretty much corner Soren, Soren sees Kirk first and goes, "Who are you?" And that's when Picard pipes up from behind him. "That's James T. Kirk. Don't you know your history?" Oh, I think this one's aimed at you there, Furball, from Rodent No Last Name. Word voice. "Warriors do not wear frilly underwear on duty." But yeah, so we get that fight, we get that separation. Kirk ends up catching up with Soren, and Soren says, "Actually, I do know my history. Aren't you dead?" To which Old Man Fight Part 3 takes place, where Kirk does his typical Kirk moves of the random slaps and things that look like punches but aren't. Ends up knocking off Soren. He goes falling. He catches himself on that, but still had the pad on him. Hanging there, cloaks the probe launcher, and then an anchor gives way, which makes him fall further, which then kind of bungees.
See, the cloak came in convenient, didn't it?
But if you're not relocating it, what good does it do?
He's an old man, and he's planning on old man fights.
Oh, fair point. So Soren stops. The pad falls onto this armature there, and they both go running towards it. But on the way there, they stop. And right before this is where, like I said before, there are things that come into play. Picard came back and gave Kirk a hand in knocking Soren off on the way, but which is what led to him dropping the pad where he did. To which Kirk says, "Thought you were going to the launcher. Changed my mind. Captain's prerogative."
Yeah.
Now at this point they separate again, where Kirk goes to get the pad while Picard goes to leave.
Soren with his little weird gangster gun takes a pot shot at him.
Which right before that, Picard even notices, "Hey, where's Soren?" Yeah. So Picard and Kirk is in distress.
For all of the practical effects that we have enjoyed so far of completely fictitious things being spaceships blowing up and crashing on planets, amazing practical effects.
Yeah.
Throw all that out the window. Now we're going back to grade school practical effects. The scenes with this bridge, especially it rocketing down the hill at the end. Sorry, spoiler alerts. Terrible practical effects.
Oh, no. I think the bad part about it is the amount of shaking it's doing, but still hanging on.
Oh. And again, we can see the ribbon in the sky.
And then you get that bit of helping hand. At which point, Kirk is pulled up towards safety-ish, but they still need the pad. because it's getting closer. We need to decloak it so we can stop the madness. At which point, Kirk decides to walk down the shaking, bucking, rocking half of a bridge to jump across to the other side to grab the pad to do what's necessary. And in his advanced physical state and age,
I would just like to point out that shadow looks a lot skinnier than the guy flying through the air.
It's all about the angles and dangles.
You're not saying it's CGI.
It's all about the angles and dangles.
Come on, we all know the answer. It's After Effects.
But so Kirk survives the jump across, manages to hold himself there, and by a stroke of luck, the pad slides down into his hand, to which he's able to reach a point over, activate the controls to decloak the launcher, and Picard's there. We see the countdown going, and we get the ribbon getting closer. We've got a whole bunch of drama. Everything's happening so close.
Pedantry again. This is how big the ribbon was the last time after the star exploded.
Mm-hmm.
And now the star hasn't exploded, but it's still that big.
But you mean there's some inconsistency here?
Slight.
Oh, don't worry. The consistency will be back on Tuesday. And at this point, Soren is at gunpoint telling Picard to step away from the launcher. Well, Picard decides to engage the locking clamps, which might be a bit of a safety issue if you're able to do that while the countdown is still going.
Yeah, I would think that the engagement of the locking clamps would default not allow the launch of a rocket.
But hey, details. So Picard completes the locking process, runs off, runs away. Soren runs up to see what happened, and boom.
Would it really blow up? Or would he just gotten, smoked out and destroyed?
A rocket reaction in the engine is an explosion. It's just a directed explosion. So, yeah, it very well could have exploded, maybe not instantaneously, but lighted, have that backwash, and then you have the superheating of everything to cause the fuel in the tanks themselves to rupture, which would be the explosion.
Before every Falcon 9 test, they do a static burn. Sometime for the Falcon Heavy, they did 100% static burn with the locking clamps engaged.
Yeah, but they were also deflecting the exhaust away. It wasn't backfeeding up.
Come on, look at this
Tech's
picture.
got it right.
Look at this picture. Soren is in the perfect spot to absorb all of that.
Yeah.
Well, Tech's got it right, though. It's Klingon design, so they're not exactly known for their safety features.
Fair point.
True. Fair point.
And Ugly German Truth also sent comments on that sentiment by saying, it's Klingon technology. You have to be able to kill yourself by the weapon, or it's no fun.
Yeah. Can't disagree with that one. But
So one thing I didn't miss in my screenshots was the extremely, extremely, extremely poor practical effects, and that would have been this rocketing down the hill with Kirk attached to it.
whee!
There it is, that's the beginning of it. And it is clearly a dummy that has arms and hands strapped to it as they just let it go down the hill.
Well, yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm disappointed.
Exactly, because here's the thing. You're falling like that, you're not going to be able to hold on. Maybe your hands, certainly not your frickin' feet.
No. But either way, the gantry, this gantry goes sliding down the hill with Kirk miraculously attached to it. After the rocket explodes, Hard goes down to check on his fellow captain. and sees the wreckage. As the ribbon passes by,
harmlessly,
it's still kind of dark.
Oh, it's a different time
for no particular reason.
It's a dark time of day now. Because
and we find a injured and dying James T. Kirk.
Started off so well with Picard almost trying to apologize and Kirk saying it was fun. Because Kirk would find all of that shit that just happened fun. Which also does tie into the skydiving that was cut from the beginning of the movie.
If they could have just stopped it there.
But instead, final words of arguably one of the greatest captains in Starfleet's history were...
Oh my.
They couldn't have just left it at it was fun and then just let him fade.
So this is me to the real human being, Captain Jean-Luc Picard, in this fictional universe. When you return from this planet, having remembered that the last words of James T. Kirk were, "Oh my," lie to people. Make it something great. Don't tell him those were his last words.
Even if you just go with what he said before, it was fun.
Yeah, I didn't hear that last part.
It was fun.
It was fun.
'Cause that sums up Kirk's personality overall with his command style and everything.
Yeah, and Roden no less lame nails it. Any line would have been better.
He stole the line from Sulu.
Nice, Mike. Ooh, my.
The novels don't count. Now, I'm not even reading that aloud. Novels don't count. But then you get a touching moment of Picard laying to rest Kirk. And then we get, hey, an actual correct representation of the shuttlecraft coming to pick him up. And we end up going back towards the crash site of the Enterprise D, where cleanup and everything has been taking place, trying to salvage what they can, because the ship itself is a total loss. Data and Troy are searching around, not really searching, don't know what they're searching for until Troy gets
I gotta find where this was. Where was my bad timing? I still don't know how this happened. Oh, there we go. We're getting close.
Okay.
There we go.
So we get... they detect a life form. Very weak, but it's there. And Data starts ripping into the debris that's in the way, only to find... Spock.
Another family reunited.
And Data, holding Spot, is crying, thinking that his emotions chip is malfunctioning again. To which Troy reassures him, I think it's working just fine. And then we get Riker helping Picard look for the family album, which somehow made it from his quarters into his ready room while he was gone?
Maybe he moved it there right before he left.
things that had happened off scene. And here we get something very, very prophetic in Star Trek. We get Picard talking about how...
All right. Someone once told me that time is a predator that stalks us all our lives. I rather believe that time is a companion who goes with us on a journey and reminds us to cherish every moment, because they never will come again. What we leave behind is not as important as how we lived. After all, number one, we're only mortals.
Speak for yourself, sir. I kind of plan on living forever.
You know, I always thought I'd have a shot at this chair one day.
You may still will. Somehow, I doubt this will be the last ship to carry the name Enterprise.
There are plenty of letters left in the alphabet.
That's not from this one.
No.
Picard to Farragut, 2 to beam up.
And then we get, the Nebula-class Farragut is the lead ship of the salvage and rescue operations for the Enterprise crew. Now, yes, the whole thing about there being plenty of letters left, that's actually said in the next movie. But this was the top tier of the bad Star Trek movies. That really is the way that I would judge it.
I'm mostly frustrated by the science and internal consistency and logic of it. I get the base plot line, I get the purpose of everything, but parts of it are just frustrating.
You mean like most of it?
So this is one of the questions I was going to ask. So the major plot points, the major things that drove this story, what are your thoughts on them? So the Nexus. What are your thoughts on the Nexus?
Well conceived, poorly presented, and poorly explored. It was a nice device that they could have used in a better way. Like, you really didn't get much of an explanation of it or much of a fleshing out of it, to where it really, for most of the movie, you only got a couple lines of passing dialogue to explain why it is so desirable. And it's not until you actually get Picard in there, and for this man who just lost, essentially, he is the end of his family's legacy, now shows up in this place, and there are all these kids calling him father, calling him papa. That part of it started to solidify why it was such a desirable place to be, because you could make anything and everything of what you wanted in that realm. The movie could have been better served, and the plot could have been better handled had they not waited to that point to show that. They did not have to use any of the major cast of characters to show it earlier in the movie.
They could have had Guinan do, when she was telling them about it, kind of do a flashback.
Yeah.
That Picard doesn't see, but, at least, the audience would see.
So then my question would be and I agree with that. I like the basic concept of the Nexus. I think it is a good driver for things. But if it is as joyful as has been described, do you think there should have been a bigger struggle internally to Picard? Or is he just strong of a man to not be tempted by it?
No, the temptation should have been stronger. And this is where I say it was a great idea, but poorly executed, because that was the other bit. Not only did you get a poor application of actually demonstrating that whole show don't tell aspect of writing, they fail that part. It was also a good comparison would be going to the Warhammer lore. In the 30K the 30th millennia of Warhammer, a number of the generals under the God Emperor revolted rather fucking quickly for the types of characters that they were portrayed to be. You have a similar thing here. Picard recognizing the temptation and rejecting the temptation happened far too fucking quickly for how strong of a mental drug that the Nexus was portrayed to be.
Ugly German Truth has a good comment about his command. Shouldn't his fantasy land have been a command with family? Because we didn't see anything command in that world, and unless that was the only thing that was driving him at that point, which I could see. But if it was a perfect world for him, wouldn't it have been a command with family?
Now that's where you get the malleability of the Nexus as well, because keep in mind, what was he dealing with initially? A fuck ton of grief of not having that family, not having that progeneration, the prolonging of the family line. So that was first and foremost, hey, we're starting there. But had he stayed in longer, I could seen him going... Like even Guinan had mentioned, is that you can go back and see their birth. Time has no meaning here. You can go anywhere and do anything related to what you want and what you desire. So ultimately, had he stayed in long enough, he could have been a family man as well as the commander of a ship like the Galaxy class where his family could be with him. But with the short time frame he was in there was no time to show that or flesh it out or even think of it as being a possibility.
Yeah, well, and it's not long enough to do it, but almost like, was it The Light Within, The Eternal Light? Which one was the episode where Picard lived out a lifetime?
Oh, when the probe got him and pretty much downloaded the entire lifetime memory when he was only unconscious for, a few minutes?
But he lived an entire lifetime, so that's kind of hard to do in a movie. So I can understand why they don't want to dedicate that much time, but his turn was too quick. It would have been neat to see him get invested in the Nexus, and then Guinan just appear, and that be the reminder.
Yeah.
And see the actual struggle.
Well, here's the thing, though, is Guinan warned him about the fact that it's going to entice you. So knowing that he's being transported in there, he's got the idea that, hey, I'm somewhere I shouldn't be. I'm going to fight this with all that I can.
But if the temptation was that strong, it should have taken more than 2.5 minutes before he snapped back to reality like that and refocused. And that's what we're saying. And another aspect to it is, if the Nexus has that positive side, all things being equal, all things being balanced, shouldn't there also be a nightmare side to it? And this is where I have to agree with Ugly German Truth of, they could have shown this dichotomy of everything, but even through a dream sequence, a nightmare of Soren, of being ripped away from the inside of it. And that segued right into the conversation of Guinan telling Picard what the Nexus is, and how Soren is... You get that demonstration of the negative side of it, the withdrawal factor of it, while Guinan is explaining, this is why it's such a desirable place to be, because you can live in joy.
They could have done some cutaway scenes or a different montage, but they were trying to hide who the antagonist was for a little bit. But they could have done some other scenes of Soren's failed attempts and his never-ending drive to get back.
Yeah.
And you're correct. It's The Inner Light was the episode. Season 5, episode 25.
Okay. That's one of my favorite episodes. Absolutely love that episode. That one catches you off guard. I mean, the first time you watch it, you don't know what the hell you're watching, and then at the end, you're actually kind of sad for the loss that Picard has, having lost a family that never really existed.
And then jumps in 2 weeks later to Time Zero.
Which, that's another thing. This brings up the whole thing of Guinan being near Earth on an Elorian refugee transport in the 2260s. No, 2290. Where and how did she end up in 1800s San Francisco?
Which episode are you talking about?
Time Zero.
I don't remember that one. I have to watch
One
it.
where Data goes back in time because the serpent thing feeding the aliens that they can't
the
see
psionic
normally.
energy serpents.
Okay. So with the Nexus, kind of agree that it is a decent plot point, except the purpose of it, poorly executed.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the line of Data and his emotions?
Progression that needed to happen, and also showing how overpowering emotions can be in situations if you're not prepared to handle them properly. Well done. That is a bonus that is a plus in my book on grading the movie.
Yeah, I don't see any specific faults from the Data's emotion timeline, other than dad jokes, a little weird here and there, but no major criticisms. What about the Kirk and Picard? You've got to have the captains interact and pass the baton.
Started off good, middle was typical Trek, but fix that end.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but I think JM could have came up with a better ending of that.
Yeah.
It's hard to admit that, but yeah, I think he could have.
Yeah, and
it's a terrible death. I mean, it's an average death. You know, if this were real, I mean, all deaths aren't glorious in the real world. Not every soldier dies a glorious death. Some of them die in terrible ways. This is one of those ways. But it's a movie, and they're meant to be, especially as a passing of the baton.
They're supposed to be epic.
Yes, this is something that should be written about in the history books. Accepting, again, that not every death needs to be written about in the history books. But this isn't reality.
Yeah. Now, this is where I will agree with Rodent No Last Name as well. You got to give the credit towards the writing of this movie for one aspect when it comes to the characters. Soren at least had a understandable motivation for what he was doing. It's one of those, you can still apply the ends don't justify the means, but you can see why he wanted to do it. You can see the why he was trying to get back there ultimately. So it's one of those, in a similar position, you can't say that you wouldn't do the same thing necessarily, especially if you've been working at it for well over 100 years at that point.
So you're saying that's where the Roman orgy was?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And if anybody in the audience doesn't recognize it, go look up the movie Caligula.
Well, all I have to say is there are some people in the audience that probably remember him more from the Sprint commercials with James Earl Jones. Jared knows what I'm talking about.
Fuck.
That is some of the best advertising you could have ever done. I almost switched to Sprint because of that.
Yeah. Well, so Ugly German Truce went back to the whole thing with Picard and his aspect of it. I do agree that there should have been some semblance of Starfleet still being in his life for that perfect balance, that perfect encapsulation. And this is where how much of that emotional turmoil factored in on that initial bit. And plus, when you look at it, the fact that you can go back and see other events at any point, how time is not linear there. There is no necessity for a strict progression. And it's also why when Kirk was heading upstairs, this time I'm going to do it right. This time I'm going to do it different. And instead of going into the bedroom to give Antonia her breakfast in bed, he ends up back at the barn on his uncle's property, which was the day that he met her. Go back to the beginning, do it right from point one. So you have that malleability and differing in interpretation of what is actually at the core causation of what guides you where in the Nexus versus what we perceive as, okay, I'm going to do it right from this moment on, or I'm going to do things right, and instead of going right from that point on, it goes back to step one. It's like, okay, here you go. Do it all over again the right way.
Yeah. Tex got it, though. They should have strapped Soren down to a chair, pried open his eyes, and showed him all the people dying while playing Beethoven.
Great point.
Yep. Cannot disagree with that one.
And if you don't know that reference, you are not a film buff.
There is something seriously wrong with you if you don't understand where that's coming from.
So then, one more question.
Yep.
When Kirk died, he wasn't alone.
He wasn't with his family.
Yes and no. He wasn't actively alone because Picard was there. But no McCoy, no Spock, no Chekhov, no Sulu, no Uhura. No one of his core crew was there. You can be alone while sitting right next to someone if the connection's not there.
I don't agree. I agree with that concept, but standing next to Picard, even if you didn't know who he was, he's there with you. So I think it would have been because they basically just brushed that aside completely. They retconned it and forgot that line was even there. If they wanted to hold true to the original sentiment of when I'm going to die, I'm going to be alone, they could have done a Armageddon-style death.
True. And I think that would have been better. Have that separation. That's why I say the interactions between Kirk and Picard, the opening bit, the middle bit, for the premise that they had going, done really well. But that last scene just fell flat. I wouldn't even say it fell flat. I would say it face planted on the sidewalk.
Yeah. So Roden, no last name, has a trivia question. I don't get it. Soren couldn't have died. He was a hologram head. Let's see who gets that reference.
By the way, Soren was Riker's little girlfriend. Yes! What a difference one letter makes. But how about this? How about we have that question be a little bit of homework for everyone? Because the next episode of Kanar with Damar, which I don't know if it's going to be next week or the week after. That is something I'm going to have to take a look at my schedule and figure out which is more likely to happen. But homework for the next episode. What was that reference referring to? What franchise was it that had Malcolm McDowell with a holographic head? In order to find out definitively, I guess you'll just have to tune in to the next episode of Kanar with Damar. But, bit of news, because travel times and everything, in just over an hour, yes, I'm giving myself an hour break to go away and do everything, we will be back on air for VTW. So more wide open panel, a little more shenanigans and fun, but this also gives us time for those of us who have not had dinner yet to actually get a bite to eat and settle in and then get back to the nonsense and drunken foolery.
Sounds good, because I'm hungry.
As am I, and with that, we will see you all in just over an hour. Later, everyone.
Basic
Later, people.
trigonometry.